Could you start by introducing yourself and just telling me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Michelle Medlock Adams. I am a longtime journalist. Actually, started my career writing sports, and then I had children, and so it was just funny. I sort of fell into children's writing and have been in love with it ever since. I have over 100 books. More than two-thirds of those are for children, and I write both in the general market and in the Christian market. And I love what I do. I'm from Southern Indiana. Married my high school sweetheart. We have two grown married daughters and five adorable grandchildren and 2 dogs and 2 cats. It is a zoo at my house most days, and I love it.
All right, that's great. Can you talk to me a little bit about your upcoming title for Endgame Press?
So, 2022 is a big year for me with Endgame. I've got several upcoming titles. I have, one project I did with my really, really close friend, Eva Marie Everson. She's a novelist. She also does some nonfiction. She runs the Florida Christian Writers Conference and Word Weavers, if you've heard of Word Weavers International. So we have a book coming out, God is Bigger Than That, and it's how to deal with fears as a child. And I'll tell you, the backstory on that book is as important as the story itself. My little grandson, who just turned 4 in August, when Bear was born, he came into the world early. He was a preemie. My daughter had preeclampsia, and she was pretty serious at the time of birth. So it was a really scary time. She went into labor. I happened to be with her. I was glad it was in Kentucky. That's where she lives. At the same time, my mother-in-law, my precious sweet mother-in-law, was actively dying. She was in Indiana. My husband was with her. So it was just really difficult time. And then Abby was really ill having the baby, and then Bear was in the NICU, and just so many things are going on. And every report that would come in from both my mother-in-law and for Bear, and Bear's my little cute grandson, and my daughter, they were all horribly negative. And I just felt so alone. Even though I've been a Christian my whole life and I was praying, I just needed to know what all these words were that the doctors were saying. I mean, it just, lots of medical stuff. And I called Eva, who used to be a nurse. So she kind of, I knew she could walk through it all with me. And I needed to kind of know how to pray. So I called her in the hospital hallway, and I told her everything they were saying about Abby and about my mother-in-law and about Bear and his lungs and all this stuff. And I got through after probably 12 or 15 minutes of just all this stuff, the medical terms. And she just took a deep breath and she said, so here's the thing. None of this is good. This is all very scary stuff. I get that. And she talked me through the most of it. And I was just hanging on by like a thread. And she said, but here's the thing, Michelle, God is bigger than all of that. I can't even tell you. It was like they came straight from heaven via Eva Diva. It was just like bam, right here to my heart. And I cried, but it was a good cry. For the first time, I felt like, all right, we're not just going to go through this. We're going to grow through this. And God is with me and he's got this. I was surprised by all of this. He was surprised by none of it. And he truly has this. I either believe that or I don't. And I believe it. And I said to her then, kind of flippantly, I think I was just in that state. I hadn't slept in days. And I said, we're going to write about this someday. And she's like, yeah. And then we hung up and I told her I loved her. Right. And then after we got through all of the emergency crises of that, I I revisited that. I really felt like God was saying, write this. So I called her and I said, let's do that book that God gave us in the midst of the storm. And that is really where this little story was birthed. It takes place on a farm. I think that was cool because I'm from Southern Indiana, kind of live in the farmland here. And it takes place on a farm. And it's all these little animals who are afraid of something that is a tangible fear. But God is bigger than all of that. And at the end of the book, the little girl who's the farmer's daughter, she's afraid of the dark, which a lot of kids struggle with that. One of my daughters struggled with that. We had the brightest night light ever in her room because she was so afraid of the dark. So I think that's a really common childhood fear. And the book addresses that too. And we have a little letter in there to the readers and to the parents of, the children that they bought the book for, or grandparents or whoever the caregivers, just sort of sharing our story and how this book came to be, and how they can proclaim God's bigger than all of that in their lives, no matter what they're going through. So this was a real heart project for us. It's one of those books that I feel in my heart. I sound so spiritual, but I was born to write. It feels so important. And Eva feels the same way. So it's her first children's book. It's so cool that we get to do it together. And we just have high hopes for this book, not just for the commercial success, which of course is always a good thing, but that we feel it's going to really touch a lot of hearts. It's needed in this season that we're in the world, with still in the pandemic. And there's a lot of what ifs and questions and fear and worry and all the scared feelings you have about the unknown and the future and not being able to see your loved ones. Kids are feeling that. You can see it. You can feel it when you're around them, how they're tense and they're not living that happy go lucky kid life. And so I think this book is needed. It's coming out the right time, and God chose us to write it. So we're thrilled with it. So that's one of the books. And then another book that sort of really is in that same season, with my friend Jan Johnson. She is a grief specialist, really an expert in grief. Not that anybody wants to be an expert in grief. I mean, but she's been through some stuff. She has books for adults on that. She's had some serious loss in her life, but has learned so much through that and is helping others get through what they can't get over, kind of thing. And so she met with me at the North Carolina Christian Writers Conference 2 years ago and was telling me that she really felt God impressing her to write a book about grief for kids. And as she was pitching me as an editor, and I sat and I listened, and my heart was just beating so fast. And I said to her, I've always felt like I should do a book on grief, but I'm not an expert in that. I've obviously suffered loss. There's been things happen in my life, but I don't have the credentials that you have. And I think that you need to get a writer, with you to do this. She didn't know how to write for kids. That wasn't her expertise, but she had all the knowledge and all the heart and felt like I was calling her. And she said, well, that's why I'm meeting with you. I really thought God was showing me that you were supposed to write this with me. And I said to her, I will pray about it because I hate to just say yes in the emotion of the moment, but I feel very strongly. I've even journaled about this. I've written many articles about grief, losing my mom, my dad, like within a year and a half of each other. And we've had some things happen, but I would love to at least ponder this with you. Let's talk about it. And so we sort of just left it on the table. We prayed about it. I agreed a couple months later, full in, I'm fully in. And then we just started working on the story. And the way the story came together was incredible. We both knew we wanted to use animals to tell the story because it's a little less scary for kids. And we both chose the same animals. Like we both cardinals. We both wanted to use birds. We're both big bird people. I mean, I have 12 bird feeders. I'm the crazy bird lady. 12 bird feeders out this window, my writing window. Is that crazy? Squirrels, birds, like I'm all about it. But cardinals, I love. Indiana's state bird is the cardinal. I know it's a state bird for many, but it's our state bird here in Indiana. I've always loved cardinals. I have a female and a male that come visit me regularly, and I would watch them as I worked on the story with her. It's just the whole journey of that book has been also special. Listening to Jan and talking through the 5 stages of grief and how kids deal with those stages differently than adults. And so then how do we address that without saying this is the stage of anger, this is the stage of bargaining, this how do we show that through story without just saying what it is? So we decided to do something I've never done in a book before called layered text, where we have the story going on and then we have questions and some insight from the expert that goes along with it. So you can read the story without doing that part of it, or you can read the story and then do that part of it. Each spread, you could read the story and then have the questions and a little bit of insight from our grief specialist. And it just meshes beautifully. So we are also very hopeful for this. Something else new I've never done is we have a Christian version of this book to go into the Christian schools and the homeschool market. And we have a general market version so that we could then help those who are grieving, the kids that are dealing with loss in the public schools, because we couldn't take our Christian version in there. So they're the same story, just written in a way that we could penetrate both markets. And so we're so excited because we just know there's a need. Again, during this season, there's a need for this book on this topic. And we just feel blessed to have been able to write this, and that Endgame believed in this book and are passionately pushing it for us, and working with this artist who is she just got it. I mean, we had a little bump in the road in the beginning with our artist, and then we got this artist. And I'm telling you, from the minute I saw her new cover that she did, it was just right. It's the right feel. It's the right emotion. So we have high hopes for those children's books, and those all come out in 2022. And I'll tell you about one more because it's a big year. I said I have a Bible study with my best friend Bethany Jett. She's my business partner at Platinum Literary. She's been my co-author on They Call Me Mom and our award-winning book Platinum Faith. And we are just, well, we're just best friends. We've been friends since we met at the Florida Christian Writers Conference like 8 years ago now. But we write well together. And Platinum Faith, as we wrote that book, we really felt like it needed a Bible study to go with it. And we came up with one. It was just a few questions. It was sort of at the end of each chapter, but we really wanted to go deeper. We always had the intention of doing an in-depth Bible study to go along with it. But the publisher that we had published that Platinum Faith with they never got on board with that. We could not convince them that this was the thing to do. Well, fast forward 2 years, and we got the rights back to Platinum Faith, and Victoria Deerstock at Endgame said she loves the book, she believes in it. Let's redo it. We're redoing the book, adding a couple of chapters and some new content. Things have changed, and we've grown, and we've got more stuff to say about these topics. So it's now called All in Faith, and then the Bible study is also going along with that, with the main book that we're adding new content to, and that comes out in the fall of 2022. So you talk about, I mean, I'm tired. It's been a crazy year, but wow, I'm so thrilled and excited and just, I guess, humbled to be a part of so many what I feel important projects for the kingdom of God right now. And so those are all coming out through Endgame in 2022.
All right.
Yay.
You have quite the list of projects coming out with us, and we're really excited for all of them.
Thank you.
Just going into some more details, all of the ones that you mentioned were co-authored.
Yes.
And I know that you've written some that are just you and some that are co-authored. Can you kind of shed some light on what that difference is, what it's like collaborating with someone? You're collaborating with three different people on three different projects. What's the difference? What are some similarities? What do you like about it? Can you just
That is
talk about
a
that?
great question. And you know what? It is completely a different process than when it's just your own book. Because I mean, I've got over 100 books, and I don't Jeff, my husband, always teases me. He's like, "You don't share well." Like, we have our own sinks in our bathroom because, I'm kind of a sink hog with my hairspray and stuff. But that may be true in the natural, but I think in the writing world, it's different. It's so, it's not just fun, but it's when you collaborate with somebody, you're both so invested in the project, and your strengths and their strengths are typically not the same. That's why you are great co-authors. And so you bring this project then to the public, to the readers who are supposed to get this book. Like, they pick it up and they know they're supposed to have it. And it's like the part of you that wouldn't have been strong is now strong because this other person brought that to the table. It just makes a project so complete. Now, I know not everybody has great experiences with co-authors. I've just been super blessed. I've co-authored probably, I'm thinking of, I've got like 7 different co-authors I've worked with in the course of my career. And really, I've just had really great experiences. I think I just don't say yes to everything when people ask me to co-author. And I don't, you can't just co-author with somebody because they're your bestie. That doesn't always work. Just because somebody's your best friend, that might be the worst person to co-author with. Bethy and I were really concerned when I say really concerned, I mean, we like almost didn't do the projects together because we value our friendship so much that we thought, what if we get into this and we don't do well together, or something happens that would cause a break in our friendship. I mean, we were new friends really when we started writing together. Only been friends a couple of years, and I mean, I was worried because co-authoring, especially if you're doing a project that's under a lot of pressure, tight deadlines, and we were doing They Call Me Mom and Platinum Faith at the same time. It just so happened the way the deadlines worked out, the way they sold, that we actually were writing both and editing both at the same time. I don't recommend that, but we survived it and we grew through it. And I couldn't have done it with anybody but Bethany. I can tell you that wholeheartedly. I know that for sure. But we survived it. We had a couple of bumps in the road that just made us stronger because we actually had to sit down and say, this is a tough conversation to have about talking about our faith and our upbringing and what I believed growing up in the Free Methodist Church and what she believed growing up in the Christian church, and how do those mesh, and how do we write this for all of the body of Christ and not making it too denominational. And it's hard when you talk politics or religion with somebody that you love and they're not the same. It's like, oh wait, oh, you don't believe that? Well, why don't you believe that? So we had some conversations, but it just made the book richer. It made our friendship deeper. And I think that I wouldn't change anything, even though it was crazy deadlines and a lot of 4 and 5 a.m., going to bed after working all night, being on Zoom together and working. And we had to do it cross country. We did go away for a week and work like together, but most of the stuff was done just like this, cross country on Zoom, and just, being there for each other and looking up and being like, I'm going to get some, Diet Coke. Go get your coffee. We'll meet back here in 10 minutes. And just being all in together. We teach a course, Bethy and I, called Collaborating with somebody, how to co-author and not kill each other. And it's a funny course, but there's a lot of good wisdom in it. It's on Serious Writer Academy. But what we talk about when we teach at writers conferences is There's about 6 things that you have to know about each other, defend each other, and do together in order to make your book a success if you're going to co-author. And I won't bore you with all of those, but one of the main ones is just giving each other permission to be human. So there's going to be times when somebody's tired. There's going to be times when there's a disagreement and maybe the person doesn't handle it well. You have to believe in the project enough and love that person in spite of their behavior at that moment to get through and push through, or it can end your relationship as authors, as sisters in Christ or whatever. So we had to give each other grace for things that happened. When we started writing Platinum Faith, that was right in the middle of the journey. We had just found out that Bear, the little boy I was talking about, my grandson, he was about 14 months old and had gone in for an ear infection checkup because he kept dropping his head, and Abby, my daughter, thought he was having an ear infection, and it was close to his baby sister's dedication. She wanted to get it taken care of. So we go. I write about this in the first chapter of Platinum Faith. So we go into. She goes into the doctor, and the pediatrician says that's not an ear infection. Anyway, long story short, he has a brain tumor. They discovered he had a brain tumor at that visit that day. Out of the blue, the little boy's completely healthy. Has had no symptoms other than he was kind of dropping his head. You talk about life changing. We had just got through the battle of his birth and all that, and had sort of taken a deep breath. And so I said to Bethany, we'd already signed the mom contract. We were getting ready to sign the Platinum Faith contract that week. And I said to her, I don't know if I can sign this contract because if it turns out that he has to have chemotherapy or radiation or surgery or all of that, I'm going to be out. That is my priority. I will be living in Kentucky. I can't do any writing. So I can't in good faith sign this contract because I don't want to leave you in the lurch. And this is the book that's become All in Faith that we're doing in the fall with Victoria Doerstock at Endgame. And she said, I almost always cry when I tell this. She said, well, here's the thing. I've got you. So we can sign this contract because I believe God wants this story told. And if something happens, I'll finish the book. I'll take the responsibility and I won't put any of it on you. You can trust me. And I did. I trusted her. And we both cried. I mean, I prayed about it. I was actually driving to Taylor University where I was teaching. And that was about 2.5 hour drive from me. And as I was driving, we prayed together. I cried with her. She cried with me. And I felt peace come over that SUV as I was driving. And when I got there, I called her back and we signed it together, praying over it while I was kneeling. I almost cried, kneeling in that hotel. I didn't know it was gonna get so emotional. And she did too. And that book it's a beautiful book, but it's so full of raw, real stuff that we go through in life. And so that's what we teach in this co-authoring class. And that's what I'm sharing with you is that you have to give people permission to have feelings and to go through stuff because life happens when you're co-authoring books. And with the children's books, it's a little bit different. It's not quite as intense, but it can be, especially when one person's got more experience in an area than the other person. You never want the other person to feel slighted or that their opinion doesn't matter or that you don't want them to feel like I don't ever want my co-authors to feel like I'm Connie controller, Tammy takeover, like you guys are just there, but I'm going to do the work. That is not how this works. And so that is not how we did it. And I feel every voice has to be in the book. And in all those situations with Endgame, it is. I couldn't have done that book without Janet, the Fly High book. Couldn't have done God is Bigger Than That without Eva. I certainly couldn't have done All in Faith, the Bible study, and the main book without Bethany. It was an equal partnership. And it's just it's a really great situation when both co-authors are in it. They're all in. They're believing the best in each other and they're praying and believing the best for the project. That's when like beautiful things happen. And you can sense it when you read the book. The best compliments when people will say, your writing was so seamless. I didn't know when one person stopped and the other began. It's because we were so in tune and so unified in the writing of it that it shows through in the reading of it. And I think that's true whether it's a children's project or a book for women or a book for the general public, general nonfiction. It matters. So I love to collaborate because I always learn something and I get better. When I work with other people, I get better. You just do. You grow. And so I think I've become a better writer this year because I've worked with those amazing people I've already named.
All right. I always love hearing about how different people write because it's
Yeah.
such a creative avenue that so many people are very different with it.
It is interesting, and I always think, "Wow, that would never work for me," or, "Oh my gosh, maybe I'll try that." I even love to see people's writing spaces. Like have you ever seen people say, "Take a picture of your office or where you write?" And I'm always like, "That's amazing." Like I would be inspired in there for sure. Like I love to see that. I think that's cool.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna start to bring this to a close. I got a couple more for you. And one of those is just, you talked about you have 3 titles coming out for Endgame next year, so it's a lot. But what do you really just hope that people take from your stories or your nonfiction or just what you have to share?
Someone asked me this past year, do I have a tagline? Sort of, what is your brand? And that's sort of a catch-all thing that people ask at writers' conferences. And I've never really been able to just be put in a box or pigeonholed, or I only do this or I only do that. I think because I am a journalist, I write a lot of things. I still do compilation books. I write for adults. I write for women, specifically, a lot of moms. I do a lot of stuff for children, both little kids as well as middle grade. And so I couldn't just define myself by age group, right? Because I don't just, so I had to think of what is the thread of my writing, and it's really hope. I think God has given me that calling to offer hope and encouragement in everything that I write. And so it makes sense. I was a cheerleader from the time I was a little girl. I cheered all through college. I think, that encouraging thing, it even came out in the natural and what I did in sports. I'm an encourager. And so whether I'm teaching at a writers conference, helping other writers grow and get their work published, or I'm writing my own stuff and I'm trying to be that voice in that text, or I'm speaking, like I spoke at a women's event last night. No matter what I'm doing, that same calling is true, is to offer hope and encouragement to whoever I'm speaking to, whether it's through text or, just in person at an event. I think that's what's important, is to figure out what it is you're called to do. We're all called to be an encouragement. The word tells us to, but it's more than that for me. It really is. I kind of now, when I am offered assignments, I look to see if is this is this something that kind of goes along with what God's called me to do? Because some of the stuff I've written in my life is just silly. I mean, I did it because it was another writing credit, but it didn't really mean anything. It was probably a good experience, but it's sort of funny. Like I have a book came out a couple years ago. It's a cookbook. It's called The Perfect Persimmon because I love persimmon pudding. We're in the persimmon capital of the world. I mean, it's something very, very quaint and known about Southern Indiana, Midwest in general. And I mean, I'm not like, ask any of my friends. I don't even cook well. Like no one would ever say, "Wow, ask Michelle, she'll know." Like I'm not a good cook. Like you have to not marry me for my culinary skills. Let me just tell you. So I do a lot of crock pot stuff, but I'm a pretty good baker. So I've got some good desserts in there. But to take on a cookbook, I mean, probably wasn't my best, idea. I mean, it's kind of funny, and I'm glad I did it, but it's kinda just didn't I mean, that didn't really check off those marks for me. So sometimes I think you have to, before you say yes to something, realize if you say yes to this, you're saying no to something else, and figure out if that's really a part of what your calling is, and that wasn't. I'm glad I did it. It was fun, but I wouldn't make that decision again to do it. So I think, if I always think about when I'm saying yes to a project, is this something I'm gonna really wanna promote? Like, is this something I'm gonna be, like, all in, like, can't wait to get this in people's hands? Yeah, that's how I feel about these projects with Endgame. I'm all in. I'm excited about them. I know that they'll be life-changing for some people who read them. And also, I think, with children's books, I have a new imprint coming out with Endgame in 2023 called Ren and Bear Books, which is Ren is my oldest, grandchild on this side with my daughter Allison, and Bear is the one I've been talking about a lot, my eldest grandchild with Abby. So Ren and Bear Books, super cute. I can't wait. And so my tagline for that is faith, fun, and fascination. I want to always instill faith. I want it to be a fun read because kids will pick it up again and again. And I always want to make it be fascinating or inspiring, or they learn something, or they're inspired to dream bigger or go further or laugh more or do something they've never done. I think that fascination factor, we need to encourage that in children, but even in adults. So I think about those kind of keywords when I define myself as a writer. And that's what I'm hoping to bring to the table with all of my future titles within game.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any closing thoughts as we kind of finish up here?
Just, I'm so grateful. I think I would be remiss if I didn't just say how thankful I am for the opportunity to work within game and to still be in the game myself. I've been at this a long time, and every book contract is a gift. It doesn't matter if it's your first or your 112th. It's a gift to know that someone believes in you enough and in your ability to put words on paper. That is, never take that for granted. So I am grateful to still be writing, and really, really happy to be working with Victoria and her amazing team. It's such a blessing because she's a writer and she gets it. Not all publishers get it. She gets it. And that's one of the reasons she started in game. So to say I'm excited about what's going on in 2022 is such an understatement. I'm going into this year like I'm so celebrating. Just can't wait. Can't wait to see what God's going to do, because 2021 was pretty much a big deal. That Dachshund Through the Snow that I did with Endgame. I mean, I just was putting together updating my proposal last night. It's won 5 first place awards. And I mean, that's just only God can do that. It just came out in October. Like, what? That's how you know God's hands all over this. And I'm just thrilled. So I'm grateful. I just want to say thank you, and thanks for this time to share my heart. I don't often get to do this. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And we so look forward to all of your titles that are coming out with us this year.
Thank you.